Hello, I'm Clovis Casali in Paris. Welcome to Face Off. Are French labour laws too complicated and even unreadable, as Prime Minister Manuel Valls says? Is France's benefit system too generous and unfit for this day and age? Reforms are in preparation and unions are fiercely opposed. To discuss the situation with me today, two experts on French affairs, Philippe Turle from international radio station RFI and Stéphane de Vries, Paris-based correspondent for Dutch TV channel RTL4. Welcome to the two of you.
Thank you.
The bill to reform labour laws will be unveiled in Cabinet on March 9th. But the government has already started discussions with bosses, with unions. Philip, can you tell us a bit more about these reforms? Are we expecting something major?
Well, they would like it to be something major, but what happens between the plan for something major and the actual final result, which comes out after discussions in Parliament, could be far apart. The problem is that France has a huge unemployment rate, and one of the pledges of President Hollande when he was elected in 2012 was to bring down the unemployment rate. Even by the end of 2013, he said, I'm going to bring down the unemployment rate and you'll see it will start to improve starting from there, which didn't happen. And now estimations are there are between 3 and 5 million people unemployed in France, which is far more than France's neighbours like the United Kingdom or Germany. The other problem is that France has a 35-hour working week, which was introduced by the former Prime Minister Lionel Jospin in the late 1990s. And this has always been chastised as being uneconomic and causing unemployment to go higher, which is not what it was originally created to do. It was originally created to bring more people into the workplace because people could only work 35 hours, so more people would be needed to fill the gap between 35 hours that were going to be worked on the former 39-hour working week. It hasn't worked either. So every government has said we've got to reform the 35-hour week. So now, in 2016, the government's come up with this new plan to overhaul the 35-hour week and to make it easier for employers to sack certain members of staff and also for an arbitration council in France to limit the amount of money that people are given if they are fired in certain cases. And this has gone down like a lead balloon with the unions and even within President Hollande's Socialist Party and even with certain members of the government without even mentioning the right-wing opposition. So it's going to be very difficult for the government to push this legislation through, but it's going to give it a go.
It's going to be difficult, and for once unions are united in their opposition to the proposed reforms. Let's take a listen to the head of one of these unions, one of the main workers' unions, FO. Take a listen.
Now we're giving employers the right to fire people. It's all about flexibility. In other words, employers get greater security while the situation of employees get even more precarious.
Stéphane, as a Dutchman, I know you find these discussions and even debates ridiculous, if not ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a discussion of the 20th century. The propositions of the government are, well, they're small reforms. They're not major reforms. And I think...
And yet they're sparking debate.
Yeah, of course, but that's France. You know, the people are afraid as soon as you use the word change, then people say, oh, no change for me, thank you. And we've seen the union leader, FO, which are the communists, the workers' force or battle. Force ouvrière. So, but you have to know that the unions in France only represent 8% of the workers, which is one of the lowest numbers in Western Europe. I think one of the major tasks of a government should be to prepare the future. Now, all specialists are talking about a change in the relationship between employer and employee. Some people use the word Uberization, which is a negative word in this case. But we are seeing that the relationship between employer and employees are changing everywhere. Employees will become more, maybe more like entrepreneurs. They will become more independent. This is a change that's inevitable, and the government should prepare that and talk about the future and not talk about the past. And I think that's one of the big errors of this government. And there's another issue that always makes me smile, is the discussion about the 35-hour working week.
Because before the show you were saying that in Holland, in your home country,
Absolutely. It's
What's the
30
average week?
hours.
30
hours. And it's actually decreasing
Yeah.
for many years already. And unemployment is only at 6%, and that's decreasing as well.
So how are they doing it?
Well, the big difference in the Netherlands compared to France is that in the Netherlands, the majority of the people, they work in part-time. Now, part-time in France is something that is has a negative connotation. It's basically something you have to do because your employer says you have to do it because there's not enough work. In the Netherlands, it's a choice of life. People just don't want to work full-time. I know literally nobody in the Netherlands who works full-time. Also because the salaries are much higher, so you can work less and earn more. Exactly the contrary as of the slogan of Nicolas Sarkozy 4 years ago.
Work more, earn more.
Exactly. So it's not the duration of the working week, it's the way you distribute the work, basically.
Well, before we continue discussing all of these issues, obviously, let's take a closer look at France's benefit system. It's quite interesting. The UNEDIC, which is the French unemployment insurance agency, expects its deficit to reach almost 30 billion euros at the end of this year. So why is this system so costly? And what are bosses actually asking for? Here's a report by Fernand Van Tetz.
Back to the table to negotiate unemployment benefits. France has an unemployment rate of over 10% and some of the most generous compensation in Europe. But lack of funds make it unsustainable. Currently, employees in France are eligible for up to 2 years of unemployment benefits, worth up to 80% of their previous salary, untaxed in the first year and 60% in the second. It also pays out longer than elsewhere in Europe. Although Spain and France are tied at 24 months, Germany only offers benefits for half that time, Italy for 10 months, and Britain for just 6. Employers say France cannot afford to be so generous.
By the end of 2016, if nothing's done, France's unemployment agency will have a deficit of almost 30 billion euros, and those without a job won't be able to get any benefits. We'd like to announce good news in France, especially when it comes to creating jobs, but right now, unfortunately, the good news is nowhere to be found.
The government is hoping to change that. One of the proposed reforms will slash the period of eligibility by 100 days, leading to savings of 1.1 billion euros. But 400,000 people on benefits will be affected. That means a fierce battle with unions lies ahead. These talks are the first step on a long road of negotiations. An agreement must be reached by the end of June.
So we've just heard that France's benefit system is too costly, but at the same time, you've got a lot of experts and the left wing, of course, saying that it's not a problem of legislation, of employees having too many rights, but a problem of not enough contracts and business for companies in the first place. Is that the case?
Well, the problem with France is that it's very difficult to hire and fire people because the work code in France, the employment law, is very strict. And so employers find it very hard when they take someone on to get rid of them afterwards because it costs them an awful lot of money.
So you think, like Prime Minister Manuel Valls, that bosses are scared of employing
That's
people?
That's true. Bosses are scared of employing people. And so we've got a situation where you have people who are on a full-time contract that become members of staff. And once they get that full-time contract, it's very, very, very complicated to get rid of them if they can't do the job. So these employers often say, we don't want to take someone on because if we find they can't do the job, it will cost us a lot of money to get rid of them. And it also costs a lot of money to hire someone because, for example, if you pay someone €1,000 a month, it will cost you €2,000 in a company to hire that person. So the government said, OK, we need to loosen up the employment laws. We need to make it more flexible so that employees can hire and fire people more easily. Of course, this has angered the left and the Socialist Party, who are accusing the government, which is a left-wing government, of playing into the right-wing's hand, saying we had Nicolas Sarkozy, who was a right-wing president, and now it's François Hollande, who's a left-wing president, who's bringing in the measures that Nicolas Sarkozy should have brought in.
And
so it's not a very popular move at the moment.
And Stéphane, I know you're not a big fan of Manuel Valls. Do you think Manuel Valls will be able to get the backing of lawmakers, of left-wing lawmakers? That's what he wants in order to put forward to get this bill passed.
Yeah, I think he will succeed because the bill will probably be amended many times. It will be watered down. So at the end, there will be a result that's not really interesting. That will not change unemployment in France because if this bill is voted, it will probably be May, June. Then it will take, then it's summer. Maybe the first effects we can expect to see them around November, December, and then it's already presidential election campaign. So it's very a cosmetic law, which will not change anything, because the main problem in France is that this society is not creating any jobs.
And that's the main problem.
That's the main problem, yeah.
I think Prime Minister Manuel Valls would disagree with you. He's adamant
we disagree on everything.
Prime Minister Manuel Valls is convinced that this is the only way forward. Here's what he said to defend his labour reforms.
This text is a Republican text. It does not contradict our values, protects employees, it doesn't remove any rights for employees, but it gives more opportunities for businesses. Here again, I'm calling for a calm and intelligent debate to overcome divisions between the unions, but also between political parties of this country.
The idea of the government is clearly more flexibility, but just as much protection for employees. Is that feasible?
It is feasible, but for me, we're almost at the end of François Hollande's tenure in office, and these measures really should have been taken a long time ago. The government should have been brave enough to introduce more flexibility in the workplace right at the start of this 5-year term, not at the end when they realise that the effort they've made to try to bring down unemployment hasn't worked. And President Hollande has made it clear in several speeches that he will only go for re-election if he can bring down the unemployment rate. So this is a last-ditch bid to try to do that before the election kicks off for 2017.
Final word?
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the strategic errors the government is making, it's making already a proposal, and then they're going to discuss with the unions. But they should do the opposite, like it's happening everywhere in Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium. We have to create a consensus, and then you can arrive at a bill that everybody supports.
That's maybe what they're trying to do, negotiate before.
Well, the bill is already written. That's a silly thing. They should get around the table and then decide what kind of country we would like to have. What are the solutions you're proposing? And then maybe in a couple of months we'll have a bill that everyone can support, and then maybe unemployment will go down.
Stéphane, Philippe, thank you very much. It's all we have time for. All the latest stories on France with special reports can be found, of course, on our website, www.france24.com. More news coming up shortly. Stay tuned.